They say once you start type checking, you never go back. And the recent State of JS survey confirms this. TypeScript is quickly becoming the way people prefer to write JavaScript. Of course, you get the safety of types, but it's more than that. You get a great developer experience, and that's why it's so popular. Now, until today, there's always been one area where it's not been possible to get type checking, type safety, or the kinds of DevX experiences we're all starting to expect, and that is Markdown. Well, Astro 2.0 brings the IntelliSense, type checking, and even validation to your local Markdown and MDX files with a brand new Content Collections API. Now, in addition to getting all these helpful tools when things go right, if things ever go wrong, for instance, if I misspell this last person's name and I resave it, you'll see that I get an error, but it's an actual error I can understand. It's telling me that the front matter doesn't match the collection schema. It tells me exactly which value is off, highlights it, and even lets me open it directly in my editor. All right, let's jump into the world's first type-safe Markdown system. Hey, what's up? My name is Chris, and welcome to Coding in Public. Now, before today, trying to process Markdown was full of small little frustrations that would just make you want to beat your head against the wall. Well, this Content Collections API takes care of a lot of that dev experience for you and actually produces a less error-prone site. Here is a tutorial I just finished up. In fact, I just posted the full 3.5-hour tutorial on my channel this week. And it's still useful, but it's just before we hit this Content Collections API. Don't worry, in this video, I'm going to show you how to fix it. But you can see here that if I jump over to the actual site itself, it looks fine and all. That's great. But if I come over here and I open up one of these files, let's come into here. And if I just rename this person's name once again, maybe I add a D to the end of this accidentally, I don't know that I've done that. And if I start to actually look through here, you can see it's already updated it here, which is all fine and well, but I click on this person's name, assuming I'll get all of their posts, and I only see one, even though they've written several. If I jump back over here to the blog and I go to the next page, you can see I've got another one by Darnell, but this one's actually spelled correctly. But if I miss this one little letter, suddenly I have two different authors that it really should be the exact same author. That's the kind of stuff that happens with Markdown all the time. And it doesn't have to be that complex. I could come in here and just say a lowercase c, and I've run into the exact same problem. So a quick misspelling, a capitalization difference, or anything like that could create extra routes. It could hit a 404 page, and those things are just hard to catch. The other frustration working with Markdown is if for some reason, let's say I change this and this date is not a date, it's just a random string of numbers, and then I try to come in here and I click on here, you can see here, this just says invalid date. I come in here, and it says invalid date, and I might be asking, where is this invalid date coming from? Is it my function? Is it the way I'm processing the date, or something else entirely? On the other hand, perhaps I'm converting from one project to another, and I used to have all of these things inside of an array. That's popular if you're using a system that you're looping through a bunch of different tags, and in this case, I might save it, and suddenly I get this, category to lower function. Well, what does this mean? This is my layout that holds everything. These are the kinds of things you run into all the time, and they're just super, super frustrating. Now, even if you get all that right, like I showed you earlier, you don't get all the cool IntelliSense. So let's say you spell everything correctly, everything is working properly, and there aren't any tiny little hidden errors that you're not seeing. But even here, you don't get the cool IntelliSense where it actually shows you exactly what properties exist on whatever data you're looping through. Now, with this little 6-post site, it's not a huge deal. I'll probably catch errors, but as soon as you get to even 50 or 60 posts, suddenly your code base is littered with tiny little errors, adding extra pages, accidentally omitting or including posts, and more. They're the kinds of errors that are hard to catch and frustrating to locate. And again, you don't get the bonus of all that typing too when you're actually templating things out. So what does Astro 2.0 offer? Well, in the remainder of the video, we're going to do 3 things. First of all, I want to give you a quick 2-minute overview of the entire type-safe Markdown system. Second, we'll set up a basic project from scratch, where I'll show you how to set this up if you're starting a brand new project with Astro today. And finally, I'm going to walk you through this exact code base to show you how I would update it to the Content Collections API. All right, so let's start with a quick walkthrough. In short, with 2.0 installed, add your Markdown or MDX blog posts to a content folder grouped by their type. Then, create a config file that defines each collection front matter schema using the validation library Zod, and export all collections in a collections object. Now, to access your posts, open any Astro route and use the get collection method to await all posts from your collection. Or you can use the get entry by slug to get a specific post. Now, the method itself actually lets you filter posts to match any front matter criteria, like all non-future posts that also aren't drafts. With the return to data, map to output the results with type safety and IntelliSense. To create dynamic routes for each post, use the same getCollection method just inside of your getStaticPaths function that you're used to using in Astro. This will return the entry as a prop. In addition to the slug and the front matter data we've already seen, each post also returns a few other things, including a render method that, when awaited, provides a full rendered content as an Astro component. Output it on the page, and you've got all your posts dynamically created. Okay, so that was the quick walkthrough. Let's now set up a basic project from scratch where I'll be able to go into a little bit more detail. Open up whatever terminal you prefer, and then simply type npm create astro at latest. Now I simply need to give this some kind of name, so I'm going to call it Content Collections API. And in this case, I'm going to start with an empty project. I will let it install my dependencies. This is one of the things I love about Astro. Their CLI tools are second to none. Now, one quick note, you may notice that this has 1.92 installed for me. That's because I'm doing it ahead of time. You should have 2.0 or higher. Let's initialize a new Git repository, and then I'll choose strict for TypeScript. Finally, I will cd into Content Collections API, and remember it already installed all of my dependencies, so I'm set and ready to go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open this up in my code editor with code dot, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, that should open it up for you in VS Code. And if I come over to the package.json, you'll notice I still have 1.9. That's because I'm doing this before the release. You should have 2 or above. So to make sure that I'm actually on the same thing you are, I'm going to do npm I and then Astro beta. Okay, there we go. So yours should say something like that, except without the beta flag. And now I can simply type npm run dev, and this will get a very basic Astro project up and running. All right, there we go. Now I've got Astro up and running. Now this basic setup is going to take us 5 steps, and believe it or not, you've already done the first one. So we've only got 4 left, and I'm going to start by adding some content. Now you might remember in the brief walkthrough that that's done inside the src folder and inside a content directory. Now each type of content needs to be inside of its own directory. In this case, I'll have blog, and then I'll need to create a file inside of here. Now I'm simply using plain markdown, but you could also be using MDX for these content collections. It can only be one of those 2 files in here though. So I'm going to say post1.md. Now, if you want to use MDX, you do actually need to install one other thing down below in your terminal. You need to type npm astro add MDX, and it will walk you through the setup. I'm not going to do that, and obviously that needs to happen down here, not up in the markdown file. Now, just like Astro files, you have front matter in markdown. That looks like this, and then you have your content down below. So let me add some content down below, and I've just generated a few paragraphs of lorem ipsum. And now up top here, I'm going to add some basic front matter. So I'll say title will be like post 1, and then I'll say description, and finally date, and I'll add a Boolean here of false. It's not a draft. One final thing, let's add an author, and we'll say John Doe. All right, so we've got a string, a specific string, a Boolean, a date, and 2 different string items. I could, of course, also add like an object, like an image like this, and just have src, point that to somewhere, and maybe an alt, and point that to somewhere. So you can do anything you want up here, but I'm just trying to keep it simple on this first walkthrough. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. We'll switch this out, and all I'm going to do is switch it out to say post 2, and then this will be Jane Doe. And one more time, let's duplicate this, and let's have a third post. And this one I'll just say post 3. All right, so we've got 3 basic posts, and all of these posts are going to be inside of the content directory and inside a common blog directory. Now you can have subdirectories inside of this for instance, like localization like en or es, and then you can actually sort by those in the get collections function. But any markdown or MDX file inside of these top level things in content like blog or docs or whatever those might happen to be, they need to share the same basic front matter schema. Now when it comes to defining schema, you can do that right inside the content directory itself. You simply type config.ts. You can also do a JS file if you'd prefer, but let's do ts. Now with that said, I'm going to go ahead and close the sidebar and the terminal so that we've got a little bit more room. And then to save us a little bit of time, let me jump over to the docs themselves, this content collections docs, and I'll add a link in the description to this. We've done a lot of this already, but you can see this is what it's saying you can do. You have to put all your stuff inside of subdirectories inside of a content directory. Here's that localization thing I was telling you about earlier where you can have further subdirectories if you want. Now, when it comes to actually doing your config, let me go ahead and just copy this out to make it a little bit quicker for us. But there's basically 3 things you have to do inside of this. First of all, you have to import Z, which is from the library Zod, and that allows you to define your collection schema items. Then you have to import the method define collection. All of this is from Astro content. Now in this case, I only have 1 collection to define, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this, and then we're going to change this around as well, because the second thing you need to do is you need to define each collection. Now, this needs to be named the same thing as your folder, so I named the folder blog, so whatever that top level folder is, that's what you have to name it. Then inside of a schema property, you simply do a z.object, so a Zod object, with all of your different properties inside of here. And then the third thing you have to do is export a collections object here, and you need to just put any collections inside of here as comma separated values. So in this case, I obviously have blog, so that's the only thing I'm exporting down here. The easiest way to type out these schemas actually is just to open up one of your blog posts and just grab all of this right here. We'll come back over here, close this down, and I'm just going to replace all of this right here. Then I can just go one after the other, and basically it's like z.string, like that. So all of these are about what you'd expect for the basic things. So description would be the same way, z.string. Date is also available easily in Zod with z.date. This would be, you guessed it, z.boolean. And finally, we come down to a value where we're going to have either John or Jane Doe. I can define that with z.enum, and then I simply pass this an array of my accepted values. So John Doe. We'll also have Jane Doe. And those are the only things I'm allowing to be in here. Astro 2.0 will generate a .astro folder, and inside of that, you'll have your different types. Every time you save, it'll update that. So if I come over here, you can see that Astro, and then here's my Astro types. And you can see that these imports here with Zod and all this kind of stuff are actually telling me my individual posts, exactly what is on each of them, what kind of collection they are, in this case, a blog for all of these. So all of this is what's being generated for me. Astro recommends that you add that .astro to your git ignore. So let's go ahead and do this. So maybe down here, we'll just say like Astro files, we'll say .astro. So it now should ignore that entire folder, so I don't need to keep track of that. It'll generate it each time that I save my files as I'm working on them. Now, the other thing you may need to do is if you come into this env.d, you'll see it just says Astro client. If I come up top here, you'll see that this reference types right here is what it should be pointing to, and it looks like it should be doing this on its own, but I'll just go ahead and replace this. Now you can see once I've done this, my error went away where it couldn't find where this was at. Now, before we move to the fourth and final step where I actually show you how to render these things in the UI, let me just talk through a little bit more about what Zod offers you. You can actually give it more specific details. So I could come in here and say .max and actually give it a max length. And you can see I'm getting this IntelliSense directly in here. So I could say something like, this should be no more than maybe 60 characters. And I can provide it a message like, for optimum SEO, please provide a title of 60 characters or less. Something like that. And I could do the same thing for the description. So let's go ahead and grab this right here. And I could just tack it on here and maybe say 160 and say 160 or less and just change this to description. Now there's a bunch more that you can do with Zod. You can see the syntax is fairly basic, but for instance, one of the things you can do is make this optional. So you could say .optional, and this makes this particular property optional, so you don't have to have a draft on each post. Otherwise, it will throw an error on you. Let me go ahead and save that and actually remove this optional because I don't want that to be optional. There are some other things you can do, like more complex validations for emails or URLs. You can even do full transformation, so like taking a string and making it into a date, but I'll let you figure that out by looking at the Zod references. Let's see what you can do down below here. Let me just make sure I point that link out here. Right here, the Zod objects. If you click on that, it'll give you a bunch of different options. You can see here, this is one of the things I was showing you, like these tags need to be an array of strings. You can even pass it enums or maybe unions to say, hey, you can choose multiples of these, but there's a bunch of things you can do just to make it really extra tight. And if you're used to working with TypeScript in some way, this shouldn't be too difficult to pick up. All right, so let's go to that fourth and final step. I'm going to go ahead and open up my local host over here just so we can see what's going on. And I'm going to close down that config. Now, finally, let's come back over to the pages and open up the index. And let's first of all get something inside of here. We're going to start by importing a method that's available to us called getCollection. You can see how that was auto-completed for me. Now, still inside this front matter, what I want to do is await that collection. And in this front matter top section, Astro gives you top level await. So I can simply say something like const, maybe blog posts equals await get collection. And all I do is pass it the name I want. So in this case, it would be blog. And you can see the IntelliSense is already telling me which collections I have available to me. So I'll save that. And I've got all my blog posts. So at its most basic, I can come down this way and simply template this out. So I'll say blog post.map. And you can notice that it's basically just going to write itself. So maybe here I have an H2 and I simply template out post dot, and then it gives me everything I need. So each time you get any of these posts back from your collection, you're going to have the body, which is the full markdown, the collection, in this case it would be from the blog, the data, which is all your front matter, an ID, which is essentially the name of the file, a render method, which I'll show you later, and then the slug, which I'll show you again here just in a second. So in this case, I want to go inside my data, dot one more time, and I want my title. So real easy to work with. It essentially writes itself. Same thing here. I can say post.data. Let's see, description. Let's go ahead and do that. And then maybe I want a link here. In this case, I could just say post.data. Actually, it's .slug, all right? And if I'm not sure about that, if I hit .data, you'll notice I've got nothing in here that's slug reference. So I back up one, here we go, .slug. And then here, once more, I probably want this title, or maybe I just want like read post, how about that? So if I save it just like that, all three posts are quickly written out. And again, I don't have to remember exactly what front matter I have or wonder if it's all going to be consistent. I know it is because I just created that config. Now, maybe that you have a very specific post that you know you want to get. So in that case, what I would probably use is instead of the get collection, I would come up here and grab one more method that's available to me. That would be get entry by slug. So I can pass it the slug and then basically get that exact post. So I could say like post 1 equals await. Once again, I get top level await, get entry by slug. And as I come in here, you're going to notice it's telling me I've got blog. And if I come in here again, it tells me exactly which slugs are available to me inside that collection. So super cool. I don't have to remember what the files are named. Grab all this, post 1, and maybe just above the H1 here, I see something like post1.data.title. And now I see post 1 showing up right above here. So if you need a single post that you know exactly what it is, you can grab it with this get entry by slug. Otherwise, just go ahead and await all of them. Now, two things I want to show you here. First of all, you can actually filter these out. So let me actually come in here and grab post 1, and let's maybe set this to draft of true. It's a Boolean, so it should be able to go either way, right? And then I'm going to come in here and I want to actually just extract anything that is a draft post from being shown. The second argument I can pass in, you can see here it's already telling me, is a filter method. So I can come in here and simply extract the data out of here and filter off of that data. So in this case, I will do an explicit return, or I say if the data of the post.draft, in this case, I want it only if it's false. So if I save that there, you can see it already extracted out post 1 because that's not going to give me anything that is draft. I might also want to come in here and add to this an extra condition, where I'd say data.date, because I know it's a date, because again, we validated that, is less than new date. That would be from this current point of whenever I'm building my site. Now, in this case, nothing's going to change. So let's go ahead and come into post 3, and I'll change this to February 2nd, and now post 3 is gone as well. So I'm extracting these out of here, saying, hey, don't give me anything that's in the future, and don't give me anything that is a current draft. Now, let me tell you two important things about the slug. As I come down here, you can see I'm just pointing directly to the slug. And if I were to click in here, it's going to go to /post 2. Now, I might want to actually create a blog directory, and then in that case, what I need to do is come in here, and I need to actually add it like this, post.slug, and I would probably point it forward here to my blog like that. So you actually have to manually write this out to make sure that it's going to go to your blog directory. If you're used to things just being auto determined based on where they show up down here, they don't do it that way. That way, these don't have to necessarily be full pages. You can use these contents anywhere you want. They don't have to be full routes necessarily. Now, we are actually going to put them all inside of a blog directory down here, and I'll show you how to do that in a second after I show you one more thing about the slug. Let me come back into the config file and just mention that in addition to the schema, you can actually also define a different slug if you want to. So I'll type slug here, and then this is a function where I can essentially return to the defined collection the slug I want instead of the default. Now, they recommend that you actually pass the default in as a fallback, so that's what I'm going to do here. Just a quick note that you cannot actually get access to your front matter data from your post in this slug function. What you do have access to, however, is something called the ID, which is essentially the name of the file, and then the default slug, which is the slug that it's going to generate for you. So I can use that as a fallback. So let's come in here, and I'm going to go ahead and just return out of this. First of all, the default slug, this will be my fallback. So right in front of this, maybe I would write some kind of custom function, so like custom slug func or something like this, and pass it my ID. Now I need to actually write this function, obviously. In this case, we're not going to do this, so I'm more than happy to just use the file name as the default slug. I think that's what most people do anyhow, but I just wanted to let you know that that does exist. So let me go ahead and close down a few things here. Let's return to the home page. All right, so as you already saw, when I come in here and click on one of these posts, it correctly goes to blog/post1, but I don't have any route to catch this. Now, you used to create a layout thing and actually drop it in the middle of the layout. What you're going to do instead is create a dynamic route. And what I'm going to do is come right over here. This is for number 4. And I'll create a blog folder. And inside of this blog folder, I'll create a slug like that, slug.astro. Now, for any of these dynamic routes in Astro, you just need to export an async function called getStaticPaths. And this can return your params and also different props you want to pass down to the page. Now we're going to actually do the same thing we did on the homepage. So let's go ahead and just copy that all over. I just want all the blog posts that are not draft and are not in the future. Come over here and I can just drop that directly in here. I obviously need this get collection though. So let's go ahead and import get collection from Astro content. Now that I've got those blog posts, now I can simply return from them exactly what I need. So I'm going to go ahead and return my blog posts.map. So I'm going to map over these and grab each post. For each post, I'm going to return an object. So I need to wrap it in parentheses. Then I'll simply type params, and this would be the slug I actually want. So I'd say slug, that should be my post.slug. Then I'll also say props, and this should be my post. Now just inside the front matter here still, I need to go ahead and get both of those. So I'll say post, and this is going to be from astro.props. And I could also grab the params if I wanted them. I'm not going to use them in this case. Now, you might notice that this is actually typed as any, so I'm not actually going to get everything I want in this dynamic route unless I declare what props are associated with this. So to do that in TypeScript, I can simply declare an interface or a type either way, and I'll say props. And this is going to be my post that I get in, should be collection entry. So this is the third thing you need to know about getting stuff from Astro content. You can grab this collection entry, and it should come in right here when I click on that. And I need to pass it a value. The way you do that in TypeScript is with angle brackets. Think about it like a function like this, where you're passing it some name or some argument. In this case, the argument is going to be blog. And as I start to type, you see it already shows me which ones I have available to me. Now that I've done that, this post should be typed as a collection entry blog, which it is. That means down below, just like I did on my homepage, with a little bit of extra work of basically just wrapping it into get static paths and returning here all of this. Now I can reference that. So I can come in here, grab my H1. That would just be my post.data.title. And once again, it kind of writes itself for me. Now let me come over here and refresh, and there you go, post 1. So it's actually showing up there. If I were to go to post 2, this should be post 2. All right, it is, cool. So how do I actually get my content down here? Well, if I were to console log this, which I'll go ahead and do now, and then open this up, you'll see that I get a lot of different things in here. I get the full text entry, let's see right here. So all this lorem ipsum. But up above here, I also get the ID, I get the slug. So all the things we've been seeing all along, the collection, the data. There's one thing I mentioned, and that is there's a render function. Now this render function gives you access to a bunch of different things. So let's go ahead and just await the render function. We'll call this rendered. We'll say await post.render. And then I'll go ahead and console log that. You'll notice here this rendered right here is going to give me the content. This is actually an Astro component, so I can pass this directly down to down below, which we'll do in a second. I actually get an array of any headings that I might have, and then remark plugin formatters. So if I have any markdown plugins, I actually get access to all that content here as well under rendered. Let's go ahead and add in the headings here for post 1. So post 1, let's just add a heading here. Let's say something like, I don't know, heading 1. All right, that'll work. Let's come back over this way, and now you can see I've got headings and depth to slug. I get the exact slug of that and the text. So you can create like a table of contents or whatever you want. In this case, all I'm going to do is actually extract the content prop from here. So this is an actual Astro component. So I can simply add it like this, content like this. And if I save it, you'll see that everything shows up exactly as you'd expect. Let's go back to the home page, go to post 2. Again, this is all being dynamically generated. The actual location/blog is created because it's inside of this blog directory. But if I want to link to it like you saw earlier, let's see, I guess back over here, I have to actually type /blog and point to it that way. All right, so that's the brief walkthrough. Now we've gone ahead and set up a project from scratch. Briefly, before I walk you through converting the old project to this new content collections API, let me just mention that if you don't want to go through all this yourself after just having watched that, but you do want to play around with some code, you can actually go into the Astro GitHub repo and grab their example blog. I'll add a link in the description. They've actually set this up to work with Content Collections API. You can see it's right here. They've got different content collections inside of here with a config file that walks you through exactly what they would do. Here's one of those transformations they did on the date itself. And so all this is available to you, and you can play around with it and actually see how it works in a real life project. To actually use this, you just go down here below and type this in, and that should create a project for you, or you can open it in StackBlitz or Code Sandbox. And again, I will add a link to that in the description if you want to play around with that. All right, let's convert that old project now to using content collections. We've made it to the third and final stage of this video, and that is to take an old project using an older version of Astro and update it to using this Content Collections API. Now what we're going to do is use the blog tutorial that I just finished up on my channel. If you didn't code along and you want to code along today, you can just come in here to the link in the description, grab lesson 16 branch, download that, and install it with npm I, and you should be exactly where I'm at right here. Now, when I'm done with this video, everything we're doing today will be in this Content Collections API branch, so you can check that out as well. The very first thing we need to do is actually upgrade our version of Astro. You'll do npm I Astro at latest, and that should get you 2.0 and above. Now I have a little autocomplete here called Fig that's telling me that I'm getting 1.92, and that's because this is before the launch. So I need to use the beta flag, but you should be fine with latest. Hey, Future Chris here. Just a note that you should probably just update everything right now for this package if you want this to build properly. Because I'm really focusing on content collections, I really just showed you how to upgrade Astro itself, but you'll need the image package updated and the RSS package updated as well. So the easiest way to upgrade everything is just to use the NCU package, and you can do that with mpx NCU with the U flag. That should get everything up to date to the latest versions, and it should look something similar to what I have in the Content Collections API branch. All right, all that to say, that should update everything for you. You can verify it in the package.json. Now back to the video. And you can see now that I'm set right here, 2.0 and above, we should be set to go. I'm going to jump over to the Content Collections documentation here and talk about one other thing I haven't yet had a chance to do, and that is when you're upgrading from an older version of Astro, you may need to update your tsconfig depending on how you set up the project. Now in my case, I did use this base relaxed version when I set up the project, so I need to come into my tsconfig here and basically add in all of this right here. So I'll do a comma and then just pop this thing in, save it, we should be good to go. Now, if you were using strict or strictest, you actually don't need to do anything. If you're using custom, you have to do what we just did as well. So custom or base, make sure that you add this compiler options to strict null checks and set that to true. All right, next I need to add that Astro thing to my .gitignore. So Astro, this makes sure that the .astro folder that will be created will not be tracked by my Git repository. And then these types should be actually added when we run npm run dev. So just so you know, that should happen automatically. We'll double check that that's the case. Now the next thing to do is to create my content directory. So inside the src folder here, we're going to add content, and then eventually we'll add blog. So let's just go ahead and add that right now. Now in the content itself, I want to add a config.ts. Since we've seen all of this, I'm going to go a little bit quicker now. That way you can just kind of practice along with me rather than having to listen to it all over again at the same speed. So the next thing I'm going to do is import both Zod and the define collection from Astro:content. And then I need to go ahead and define my blog collection. So define collection. And here this is just going to be an object. And this can have a couple things. In this case, I want my schema. This will be a z.object. This is a Zod object. And once again, the easiest thing to do is to come over to like post 1 here and just simply copy out all of this stuff and drop it in right over here. Now, just to save you a little bit of time, I've gone ahead and done that and actually updated it as well. So let me just talk you through this because it's not too complicated. You can see for the title and for the src and the alt, those are all just strings. Same thing with the description. However, with the description, I've added the additional limit that it has to be only 160 characters or less, and I've given a little message in case that's a problem. You can see because this image itself was an object over on my post, so over this way you can see this is an object. I have to declare it as an object, so z.object, and then everything else should apply right here. Now I've also got a top level date as well, so z.date, that works. For the Boolean, I've said that I want the default to be false, so when I create a post, it should be set already as ready to publish, and then I'll just control whether or not it does by the date it's published. Now the two odd ones here are the enums for the author and the category. Basically, I'm saying these are the only values allowed for any of my blog posts, and if I wanted to add another author, I would have to first come in here and add it to my schema, and then I could use it on a blog post. So with all that out of the way, the last thing I need to do is to export the collections, and any ones I have, in this case, would just be the blog. So we've got the config up and running. That's really kind of the thing that controls everything else. Now right now, everything should still work without any breaking changes the way we set it up. So npm run dev should get everything up and running. And just to make sure that's the case, I'll run that, come over this way, I'll refresh, and there you go. So the blog should be working, everything's pulling up, but of course it's not using my content collections quite yet. So the next thing we need to do, we'll break it all. So let's go ahead and break it. I've got this blog folder ready. I need to come inside my pages, inside my blog, and grab all of this and just add it right over here. Now this will break everything pretty much right away. You can see that right here. It's all getting broken and telling me exactly the problem. Another great thing about 2.0 of Astro is these great error messages. I can even swap over to dark mode, which I rather like, jump into my editor, all that's possible. Now, the next thing I want to do is come in here to my post and remove this layout. We're no longer going to be using that. So I can get rid of all of these right here. So those should all be gone. Just a quick note though, that if you have any relative imports here, you may want to just make sure that they still work because you've changed the location here. It may be a little bit different. But you can see I've got everything set up and ready to go for these blog posts now to just be used. Now, the next thing to do is to actually get that content down into my different routes. And on this homepage route, I'm already seeing that I've got an astro.glob that needs to be replaced. So once again, like we've done before, I'm going to come in here to this index.astro and do a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to come up top here and import a couple of things. We'll get the get collection. And if I hit enter, the extension I have for Astro goes ahead and pulls this in from astro.content. All I have to do then is come in here and grab this. And I just have to grab the collection, and the name of that collection is blog. Remember, that's what I named it in my config, so that's what I need to name it here. Now, you may remember that we can't actually limit what we get back here directly from the get collections. There's a filter method on it. However, I went ahead and created this custom function to format my blog posts, and you can see that I can filter out future posts, sort by date, and limit, all based on this one little function, and it should still work for us just fine with one exception. And that is that you might see all throughout our project here, we've got this post.frontMatter. If I come back over this way though, and I were to console log this, I don't know if it's going to do it without erroring out of me. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. So you can see now I have the same kind of front matter data, except now they've just called it data. So I need to actually update everywhere it says front matter to make sure it now says data. So probably the easiest thing to do would just be to open up the sidebar here, and maybe I'll just right click inside this SRC and say find in folder. I just want to update every front matter and replace it with data. I'm going to go ahead and just blindly click all these, and that should replace all those, which should fix a lot of our errors, and already you can see it's actually working properly. So just to make sure that worked on our JS utils here, let me come in here. So yeah, it looks like a.data rather than .frontMatter. So this should be working just fine for us now. We don't need to do anything else with that. I can get rid of this console log right here, and let's just make sure that everything else down here is working. So we've got this links, those are all fine. This front formatted post now should be pulling in just fine. I may notice when I hover over this that it's telling me that it's an any type, which means it doesn't know that it belongs to this content collection. If I come up top here, there is a way to actually tell it that this is part of a content collection. Now it knows it right here, but once it gets down to here, it's not really sure what it's going to get back from this formatted blog post. There's a couple ways to do that, but let me go ahead and just type this directly here, and I actually get another thing that I have access to called collection entry. And so what I'm going to do is just come in here and say that this needs to be the type of collection entry. Now, if you're not familiar with TypeScript, I'm actually learning it myself right now, so I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. But this type here takes in essentially like a parameter, all right, or an argument. In this case, it would be the type it is, and this would be blog. And rather than in parentheses, you do it in these little angled brackets. And now in this case, it's going to be an array of these. So I want to just make sure I say that it should be an array of this type right here. And I'm passing in the type it is, which is blog, which means if I hover over here, now this gets the same thing, which means if I come down here, I should also get access to this. This knows it's one of those, which means if I come in here and say post dot, I get access to all these things in my IntelliSense. Now you'll see all automatically right here, it knows that it shouldn't be a URL anymore. It should actually be a slug. All right, because now they've changed that as well. So slug is different. It used to be URL, and front matter is different. It used to be front matter, now it's data. Now there's a couple other components inside of here where we may need to do something kind of similar. So if I come in here to the postcard, you can see that now it's being called data. It used to be front matter, same thing here. Everything else down here should work, but there's one other thing you need to know about the way the slug now works. Because the content now lives in a different directory, all right, up here, so inside this content directory, even though it's inside of a blog folder, you don't have to necessarily have each of these content pieces as full routes. So you might just want to write a bunch of your content in your site as markdown files. Maybe you have a bunch of different cards that are displaying certain items, and you just want those to be written in markdown rather than anything else. So that might be its own content collection. So even though I'm going to eventually have these at the blog route, there's no real understanding of where you're going to place these. You just have to slug for the individual thing. So to tell it that I want it to go to a /blog route, I need to actually grab all these URLs. So I'll grab the first one and hit Command and Shift and L. And again, this is in the post card component. And inside here, we're going to have a little template string where I'll say blog, and then we'll grab the URL. We'll close it off with a final trailing slash and then close off that template string. So now if I were to come in here and click on this, you can see it should go to blog/post4. Now it's going to error out right now, but that's fine. Before that, it would have just gone to /post4. So it wouldn't have known to go into that subdirectory. All right, so let's close down this postcard and see if there's anything else in here. So we've got this link. I don't think this should point to anything because everything we're passing in here is a direct link straight to it. So we should be good to go there. But there are a couple other routes before we get to the main blog posts themselves that we want to just double check that they work. So if I come in here, right here, this is a route to a category, and you see that this is going to error out. Then I also have a route to an author, and that should error out as well. Now they're giving me the same message, the same error message, because they're all pulling from this .glob. So let's go ahead and fix those the same way. And in fact, I'm going to use a little sequential pasteboard I have here. Let's just grab it right like this and right like this. And I might even grab this right here because we might need this as well. All right, so all those we're going to grab and just update both of those areas. So let's look at the author first of all. Actually, I'm looking at the category, so let's do that one first. So we've got the category itself, and let's go ahead and paste the first one right up top here. So I'm getting the get collections and collections entry, and I'm going to come down here below, and where I figure out basically which category post to show, this is what I need to update. So right here, let's go ahead and update this. And right here, it doesn't know what type this is, so let's do the same kind of update here. So I'll type it just like that, and now you can see that it actually is pulling these, comparing them, and then showing which ones need to display for the category of CSS. If I back out of this and go to reference docs, that should work just the same, and that's perfect. Now scrolling down here, you're going to see that I've got a post.url, and it's already saying, now that I've typed it, it knows that this should be slug as well. And I might have a couple others of these on the site because we named all these the same as in post.whatever. Let's go ahead and just copy this. Let's do the same thing. Let's come back over this way. I'm going to search for post.url, and you see I've got it in a few different places. So let's change this to post.slug, and this time let's do maybe the smarter thing, which would be to come inside here and just double check that's the case, also the case, also the case, and also the case. So let's go ahead and replace all of those, and now that should work just fine for us. I'm going to re-grab all these. We'll do the same thing again. Just easier to copy and paste them than retype them out. Grab this here so that we know that the category now works. Let's get the author page working as well. So I'll grab the author right here. We'll do the same thing. We're up top. Paste in that get collections. Right here is where we've got that glob. And then let's go ahead and type this as well. Now, just to make sure everything is still working, I come down this way. All this looks great. Post.slug, that probably got updated in our last query here. You'll notice that these also have a post of any type, so they don't know exactly what they are. There's a couple of different ways we could handle that, but like this author name, we know is going to be a type of one of those authors. When I come down here, though, you can see that that's not being inferred. So we could actually set that up as a separate type and extract that from our Zod config. Just to make it a little simpler, though, let's just worry about the post right now. We'll leave the author alone. If we know that this post is typed properly, this should work as well. So we can do the same kind of thing we did a little bit earlier. In this case, let's just declare in an interface. We'll call this props. We'll set the posts. This should be all posts by the author, so it should be an array of these collection entries. And then for the author name, we'll simply set this to a string. So now this should be a string, and this should be a collection entry. And if I come down this way, this should now be post, so it knows what it is at this point. Same thing here, it knows it's an author name. Now, once again, you'd probably want to type this, extract that from your OneZod configuration, but we won't do that for the sake of this not really being a TypeScript tutorial, just really more about converting to the content collection. All right, so we know we've got the homepage working. We've got all these links properly pointing to blog/whatever it is. The author page is working, the CSS and reference docs in general, all these different categories working properly. Let's now go to the about route. I don't think there's anything weird here, so we don't need to worry about that. We haven't used any collections there. If I come over here, though, we've got another error on the blog. So you can see we've got the same kind of thing where we're actually awaiting a glob. So let's fix that as well. So once again, hopefully you're getting the hang of this by this point. I'm going to grab this, and let's grab this as well. And let's open up the blog. So let's come over here. It's under blog. Nope, that's content. So it should be under the pages, blog, and it's this dynamic route right here. So I've got to get static paths that's paginating through all of these, but rather than using a glob, we are now going to use our collection once again. And let's go ahead and come in here to this formatted post. Once again, we will set this as an array of collection entries. Now this gets passed down to the paginate function right here, and each of those pages gets passed down right here. Now as we look at these, we've got these postcards. This is the component on the home page that we already updated, so that should be good to go. Now we've got the pagination, which should just point to different pagination items. So like previous URL, all those kinds of things. So again, we're not using anything from our content collection here. This category cloud, however, is. So if I click into here, I think this is where we're going to find this error right over here. So as you can see, once again, I am awaiting these things. So you know the drill at this point. Why don't you just do it yourself, and I'll do it quickly here in front of you. All right, so those 3 quick changes and everything should work properly. Now, one quick note here. Before we didn't have type checking, so I had to lowercase this to make sure we weren't creating duplicated categories if I accidentally capitalize something like I actually did in the tutorial accidentally. So let's go ahead and remove that. So we don't need that anymore because, again, we got type safety. Now, all the rest of this should work just fine, and that means when I come down to the bottom here, I've got this category cloud down here where they're all working properly. And again, because we already updated that category route, all those should work. Jump over to the next. Same thing works over here. Again, all these categories should work. All the people should work. And I think that means the only real thing we've got left besides some minor items like the RSS feed is the actual routes. So if I click into here, we should get an error because it doesn't have anything there to capture this. Now, if I jump back over here, you might remember that under blog, under pages, we have this paginated route. That's what we were just working on. But that's just going to display cards with all the individual posts. That's this page right here. It's not actually displaying the post itself. So we actually need another dynamic route, except in this case, we're not going to have a paginated route. We're going to have a route that's going to look for individual items that get passed to this exact spot. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll come in here, and I'm just going to call this slug.astro. And note the square brackets. Those are important. Now, just like we did over here, we need to actually generate static paths. So we need to get these static paths. Now, what I'm going to do is actually grab the layout that originally held those blog posts. And this is going to be the most confusing thing we've done, but a lot of it is just going back through the same kind of stuff we've already been doing. So I'm going to grab this blog post layout, drag it down here. So I'm going to grab this blog post layout and go ahead and copy all this out. In fact, I can just delete this. I could have moved it down and renamed it too. That would work as well. Let's come in here and just paste this. And then what I need to do is rather than doing a glob kind of at the top level, I need to actually get static paths. Before we do too much though, we need to rechange where all these imports are going to. So let me grab that right there and hit Command, Shift, and L. And then I should be able to just go up one more level for all of those. And then the main layout, because it's no longer in that same directory, I need to actually go into layouts and get my main layout. Okay, perfect. So when I hit this route, like blog / whatever, it should look at this slug and it needs to look and find if there's a static route that matches it. So the very first thing I'm going to do is grab all this because we're eventually going to extract this from the route and I'm going to put it down below. Let's just put it right here. Now this right here is what I need to wrap inside of a get static paths function. In fact, what I can do is just grab this right here. So let's go ahead and do that so I don't have to type all this out. We're not going to paginate through anything. And then let's go ahead and close this off. Now once again, I need to replace this and I need to first of all import my get content collection. So with the get collection, let's see, get collection. Now in this case, all I need to do is grab the collection of blog. That should pull these out here and it does. I've sorted by date. Set that to false. That's because I was using it to grab some related posts. So I actually don't need this right here, but we will need both of these in a second. So I'm going to copy these down here below. We will eventually need this. For now, I don't need this right here. For now, though, I don't need to sort by date false. I can just take the default, which should get me anything that is not marked draft and not in the future. And that's, again, something we set up in the tutorial. Now, out of this get static paths, I need to return from my formatted posts. I'm going to map through each post, and I'm going to return an object here. So to return an object implicitly here, I need to wrap it in parentheses. I've got my params, and this would be the slug itself. So it knows basically which route I'm looking at, and that would be my post.slug. Now you may have noticed I'm actually not getting typing here. So again, I can go ahead and just add that typing right here if I want to. And in addition to the params, I actually want the post itself. So I'll say props, and this will just be the post. So the individual route, I should have everything I have on that collection entry that I can now destructure here from the Astro props. Now this shouldn't be called data because I'm passing it down as post. This needs to be post right here. Now even though I'm receiving this down here and I've typed it up above, you can see that it's still telling me it's any. So maybe rather than declaring it up here, I can just come down here and declare this as an interface, props, and this is just going to be the post is equal to collection entry. It's not going to be an array, it's just a single item. And here was one of our errors in replacing front matter straight with data. You can see that here I actually need it to be from the post.data, and you can see that autocomplete already showing up for me. So the post.data should give me the title, description, all that kind of stuff. Now, the reason we need to actually do this again is now that I'm in the route, here's where I want to actually grab a list of related posts. Now, you can't see it yet because it's still going to be broken, but if I were to scroll down here, eventually when the post is live, you'll see that any related posts that are not the same post, so they don't share the same title, but they do share a category, I want to make sure that they show at the bottom of the page. So that's why I've got to do it down this way. So I'm comparing it to the category, and once again, I did .2 lowercase because we had no way of checking that, but now we do. All right, with our schema. So now I'm just going to grab all those related posts, and that should show down below. And you can see over here, I'm being told that data does not exist. That's because this would need to be post.data. Now in this case, I don't have any of them that are going to have robots set to true because these are blog posts, so I can just get rid of that altogether, plus it doesn't exist on the schema. And then here, I don't really need to pass data.image. I'm not sure what I was thinking anyhow, because didn't we just extract that? Yeah, right there. Okay, so we should be set just like that. Now I'm getting some red squigglies, but that's actually because I've switched back to the release version of the Astro extension, and so I'm getting these because it's not sure how to handle these. Normally you'd have to do title equals title, something like that. So I think that's actually the problem there, but let's look at everything else. Category cloud, we already took care of that. Related post. Now this is not a component we've looked at yet, so let me open this. Now you can see here we've got post.slug. This actually needs to point to the blog instead. You might remember we have to actually declare that now. So I'll say /blog, and this should be post.slug, and I can finish it off like that. And then the title should be visible in here as well. And once again, I could type that inside of here if I really want that autocomplete, but I think we're set and ready to go here. I do see one other problem, and that is that we've got a slot. Now, no longer are we slotting stuff in. We're going to actually get the content directly here. So let's get rid of this. How do we get the content out of the post that's being passed down right up here? Well, you might remember if I were to console log this, and it lets me see anything. So let's go ahead and do that. It looks like it already fixed our problem just by removing that slot. That I've not only got the description, the draft, the category, all the front matter, but I've got this render function. Now right now there's no content. Here are those related posts, by the way, but there's no content yet. That's because we need to extract it from that render method. So if I come in here and say const, let's just call it rendered or something like that. And this would be await post.render. And this is a method, so I need to actually run it. And then once it's run, let's go ahead and console log it. So here we go, we come down this way, and I'm going to get several things at the very bottom here. Now you can see here what I'm getting is the content right here, this rendered content. This content is an Astro component that includes all the rendered markdown. So it's rendered back to HTML, but it also gives me a couple of other things. I get a list of headings. Now in this case, I don't actually have a heading for this post. This is post 5 it looks like, so let's go to post 5 just so I can show you what that looks like. If I came in here and added a heading like heading 1 or whatever, you can see that now, let's see, let me get rid of this console log. So we only have one thing to worry about. If I come to the bottom here, you're going to see I get an array of headings, and I get that heading text, which is heading 1, and a slug. So you can actually create like a little table of contents in here as well from here. If you're using any remark plugins for Markdown, you also get that data back here as well. The only thing we really want though is this content for our use case. So let me get rid of this, and then rather than grabbing the render, let's just extract out of here the content itself. And that is what I want to place right where our slot was. And that would be right inside this content. So content like this is again an Astro component that I'm getting back, and now I get all the rendered HTML right here. So just like that, I should have access to every single blog post, and setting it up once, now when it hits this route, it looks and says, hey, is there anything that matches this exact route in all of my posts? It looks at those slugs, and assuming that one of them does, so right up here, these params, assuming that one of them does, it's then going to render all this down below for each individual route. I've even got these related posts All the authors should be working. All these should be working. I think we just about fixed everything. Now, there's one other thing I know we need to do, and that would be we need to actually worry about this RSS feed down here. So if I click on this, you can see it still shows, but I don't have anything for my actual feed. So let's open up the sidebar, and I'm going to look at this rss.xml.js. All right, RSS forever. 2023 will be the year of RSS. So here we are. You can see I'm using one of these globs, and it's kind of messy. I've got to actually look at the object.values and then loop through those. And so we can clean this up quite a bit with this content collection API. So you know the drill at this point. We're going to come in here, and I'm going to go ahead and import those things up top. And this whole import thing is kind of messy. So let's go ahead and get rid of this and just say get collection. And the collection we're going to get is just our blog collection. Now, rather than passing this in as object.values, I can just pass it in just like this and format my blog posts. Now, because we did that global search for post.url and post.frontmatter, you can see all those are automatically updated as well, which means, fingers crossed, if I come back over here, it should be showing all my posts, and it's not. And I think I see the problem, and that is that you have to await this get collection. So now it should be showing it all, because once we've awaited it, then we can actually format it, and we've done all that. Now they're all set up and ready to go. If I were to click in here, it would go to the current post. Now if I click in here, you're going to see a problem. So this is the live site, but notice the URL. It's not going blog/post6. It's actually just going post6, which means we've got to do the same little thing here. So in a template string, we'll say /blog post.slug, and then we'll close off the template string. It means if I come back over here and refresh, you can see now it should be pointing to the correct thing. This is the actual live site that we created together in that Astro series. Now, a couple quick things. You may say, hey, you know what? I noticed you didn't have autocomplete over here. And I didn't. In fact, if I came in here to slug, you can see nothing shows up. Now, you might just say, well, I know what to do. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to add that type. So you come in here and you add the type, and you get all this error. What is going on? Type annotations can only be used in TypeScript files. And that's right. The way we set this up was just with a normal JavaScript file. So if you want that, you actually have to come over here and just change it to TS. All right, and there we go. So now we actually have access to all those types right over this way. Now that we've got this all set up and running, we're actually done with the project. We've converted it completely, but let me show you the actual benefit to it. If I come in here and let's say I add another post. So I come underneath the content here. Let's add a post 7, and maybe it's by somebody else. All right, so maybe it's Anna Dixon. Maybe instead it's Darnell. Didn't we have something like McClure or something like that? So if I save it here, you're going to see that I actually get some kind of error message I can read and know exactly what it's supposed to do. Right here, this line, and I can click here to open directly to this file. Of course, it's already open, so not a big deal. So I can say McClure like that, and I think that should take care of it. Now let's say I said like Astro down here, same kind of problem. If I somehow messed up this date, it should actually give me an error that it has to be a date. It can't be a string. So this is the benefit of actually typing like this. In addition to all the nice IntelliSense, you actually get real type checking with Markdown, which is incredible. I hope these series of walkthroughs have helped you feel confident with the Content Collections API. If I can be a help at all, feel free to reach out. And once again, I'll remind you that I'll add all the code that we just did today to this Content Collections API. If you find something I missed, feel free to do a pull request and let me know, and I'll add it to the branch. All right, thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Happy coding.